the Watershed Council to order, and we appreciate everyone attending. We're not sure we quite have a quorum yet, but we'll go around and make introductions. So first, here at the table, Sterling, if you would start out.
Thank you. Sterling Brown with Strawberry Water Users Association, but on this board or council representing Utah Lake Watershed.
Great. Eric?
Eric McCulley with the Jordan River Watershed Council.
Thank you.
Nathan Dowds with the Bear River Watershed Council.
Todd Stonley with Division of Water Resources.
And I didn't introduce myself. Scott Paxman. I'm with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District, but I represent the reclamation projects on this council. Ricky?
Ricky Ranko Browning, Utah Petroleum Association, representing industrial interests on the council.
Go ahead.
Brett Palmer with West Desert Water Council. I work for.
Could we get them to speak in the microphone, please?
Brett Palmer with West Desert Watershed Council. I work for Stansbury Park Improvement District, representing public water suppliers.
Marty Bushman, Utah Attorney General's Office.
Laura Vernon, Division of Water Resources.
Grace Patrick, Utah Shared Stewardship.
Okay, good.
Summer Dawn, Division of Water Resources.
Representative Gaylan Benyon, just here to learn.
Christy Hansen, Bear River Watershed Council.
Hi, I'm Soren Simonson with the Jordan River Watershed Council and Jordan River Commission.
Andy Rasmussen with the Langdon Group.
Peter Gessel, Smith Hartfixon. I'm assisting Langdon Group.
Rick Smith, Davis Weber Canal. I'm on the Weber River Watershed Council.
Brian Steed from the Grace Valley Commission.
Great. So we've got some online as well, but before we go there, I want to make some excuse a few of the board members. So Corey Cram from Washington County Water Conservancy District, who is the chair of this group, is unable to be with us today. Joel Ferry is unable to be here, as well as Kim Shelley. So we've got some online attendees. So let me just read those off. Brett Prevedel.
He's with the Uintah.
Oh, very good. Oh, so we're going to hear from him. Great. Candace Hassenjaeger from Water Resources. Carly Payne from Water Resources. Not sure who DNR is. Ken White. Chris Hamlet. Marshall Shroop. So she's a board member, correct? Awesome. Mark Stratford is as well. Yes, he is as well. Paul Monroe. I think that's it. Oh, Paul is. Great. Okay, welcome, everyone online.
The person marked unknown is Peggy Killian.
Peggy Killian.
Yep, sorry.
Oh.
Having troubles with getting the login on there. But.
Great. Well, welcome, Peggy. Okay, very good. We'd move to approval of the minutes for July 13th. Do we have a quorum? Do we know?
We are one short, but let me double check. There's 4 here. Are you sitting in for Laura as a proxy? Okay, so if we can't, Eric, which I think is okay, then we would have 9.
Okay, perfect. We have a quorum.
Chairman, we were unable to get that on the record. If that was commentary, if we could please have the microphone unmuted.
Yeah, just confirming that with Eric McCauley here, sitting in for Laura Briefer from the Jordan River Watershed Council, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So with that quorum, we'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes, if that's acceptable.
So moved.
Motion from Ricky, second from Nate. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is kind of critical. It's the review of member terms and elections of officers. We'll have Todd go through what our bylaws dictate, but then we might have a discussion on whether we kind of hold off on this item because of the lack of council members. So go ahead, Todd.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm referring to. I'm going to bring up the Utah Watershed Council's bylaws or organizing documents and share that as a tab here. Actually, I've clipped excerpts from it, from that organizing document here. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay, so I'll scroll down. Yeah, I just wanted to do a review of member terms before we go to the election of officer. If that takes place today, that would be useful background. So in the organizing documents for the Utah Watersheds Council, it mentions the following. Council member terms. The following members shall serve for a term of 4 consecutive years, with each term expiring at the end of the designated calendar year. A member whose term has expired shall continue to serve as a member of the council until the member is reappointed or replaced for the ensuing term by the appointing authority. There is no limit to the number of terms a member may serve if reappointed by the member's appointing authority. The initial term shall be staggered as indicated, with all subsequent terms being for a period of 4 years. So the member appointed by the Utah Association of Counties is due to through 2027. The member appointed by the Utah League of Cities and Towns is 2024, and that's Mark Stratford. I can't remember who's the Association of County representative, so I apologize for that. But the member appointed by the Utah Association of Special Districts is 2025. And I think that's listed on there, Scott, if you...
I am trying to find it.
There's the counties.
Oh, counties. Victor Iverson.
Yep, so Victor Iverson represents the Association of Counties. Who represents the Special Districts, Association of Special Districts?
Corey Cram.
Okay.
Corey, yeah.
The member appointed by the governor to represent reclamation projects, and that's our vice chair, Scott Paxman. That goes through 2026. The member appointed by the governor to represent agricultural interests, and that is Val J. Rigby, if I'm correct, is 2027. The member appointed by the governor to represent environmental conservation interests, that's Marcel Shoup, 2024. And the member appointed by the governor to represent business and industry, water interests, that's Riki Franco Browning, 2025. And the member appointed by the governor who is a Utah attorney with recognized expertise in water law is Warren Peterson, and that's 2026. So just for reference, before you do election of officers, that might come into play. So then there's a note here about the members appointed by local watershed councils shall begin in the calendar year the member is appointed and expire at the end of the second full calendar year after the appointment is made. So we'll be keeping track of those in our records and make sure we're all in order as we proceed forward. Okay, then the section of election of officers, I'll just read that section here. Election of officers, the members shall elect the initial chair and vice chair of the council on the date these rules and procedure are adopted by the council at the last regular meeting of odd-numbered years, which is this meeting unless you decide to meet again. The council shall hold elections for the offices of chair, vice chair, and any other officer positions from among the members by majority vote of the members of the council. And that's significant to note that the majority vote of members of the council. So if you have a quorum, it would need to be at least 9 at this point to be a majority of the council. And you have a quorum, so that would have to be pretty much unanimous. Warren just came, so he's an additional person. And then election practices may comply with Robert's Rule of Order. So with that review, are there any questions before we discuss whether or not we want to have election today?
I have a quick clarifying question. So officers' terms are 2 years, and we have some folks that will be reaching, depending upon the staggering year, the end of their term. There aren't any term limits though, right? What's the reappointment process if someone wants to continue serving?
Well, I'll read that section. Officers shall serve a term of 2 years. If an election is not held by the 1 year mark, the officers will continue serving in their positions until new officers are elected. So I guess that answers that sort of. Yeah. We have a question online from someone, or? Yeah, Marcel, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Just for clarification, so the officers that were elected in the first round have only served for 1 year, correctly? They haven't served their 2 year term. Is that right?
They were elected, I believe, at the January 2022 meeting, so it's almost been 2 years.
That's crazy.
If you can believe it, yeah.
Yeah, that's I can't believe it's been that long.
I think it actually might be April, because that's when the organizing documents were adopted. So maybe not quite 2 years, but.
So how does election today, it would be forward looking, right? It would be as of next year, those officers would take position, or they still haven't full.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
I guess technically they have not served 2 full years yet. So I guess there's discretion there that you could take. But it does say the elections will take place at the end of last meeting of an odd numbered year. So if you didn't do it now, you'd have to wait, 2 years?
Right. Technically, yes. Or we could have another meeting, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that. And Corey is not here, but I talked to him quite a bit this last week, and he has got additional duties from Washington County Water Conservancy District and feels like he is unable to continue as chair. I didn't clarify whether he was unwilling to continue on the board, on the council or not, but he would like to be, not to be nominated as chair. So, okay, with that discussion, any other discussion before we ask for nominations or before we talk about whether we should postpone? Since we've pretty much got just over half the council here. Yes, Sterling.
Questions, Scott? Do we have another board meeting, council meeting between now and the first of the year?
No.
And if I understand, Todd, the 2 year current elections end the end of this calendar year. Is that correct?
That's the way I read the organizing documents.
So the letter of the law is, it's today to get our leadership in order.
Unless we call another meeting of the council. But you're right, yes.
Okay.
Before the end of the year.
Which would be primarily to elect officers.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? Yes, Warren.
Yeah, thank you. Is this working? Yes, it is. All right. So what I just heard Todd tell us is if we don't meet on the last meeting of every odd-numbered year, then the current officers would stand for life if we just keep that pattern.
Oh, I see.
We could either do that, or I'd be willing to put forward a motion that if Corey's not able to continue, that that the council elects Scott Paxman as the chair for the coming 2 year term.
Mr. Chair, a little bird just spoke in my ear who said you probably have the discretion as a council to postpone the vote till the beginning of next year. if that was desirable. There's no reason you'd have to vote today to elect officers if you weren't comfortable doing that.
I saw who whispered in your ear, and I don't think he looks anything like a little bird. Well, I'll still place the motion, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
if it's in order.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to, what's the term, nominate or to?
My motion was to elect.
Elect, okay, elect.
Assuming there would be no other candidates put forward, but which
To elect
was
Scott Paxman as chair. Any other nominations are welcome. Going once. So we'll call for the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed of the motion?
The chair's not able to vote on this motion, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you for accepting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, glad to do it. So technically, we've got a chair, and the vice chair has just been vacated. So looking for nominations for a vice chair.
Seeing the rush to the microphones, Mr. Chair, maybe it's appropriate to follow council's advice and postpone this item until the next meeting. I think that would give time for council members to confer among themselves and surface candidates and work from there.
I think that would be a great idea.
All right, so I'll make the motion that we table this item until table the election of a vice chair until the next council meeting.
Okay.
I don't know if Paul's not a member of the council, but he has his hand raised. Paul Monroe from the Central Island Water Conservancy District and chair of the West Desert Watershed Council.
Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, thank you. I just had a question or comment. I don't know if it was just the order of the agenda or what, but, Brett Palmer is there from the West Desert Watershed Council. And I don't know the specifics of how organization currently is, where, I don't think that our council is certified yet. We have nominated Brett to sit on this council. So I think that that's probably a wise thing is to postpone it because you will have additional members that could be sitting on there. So
That's a great point. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
If I may, I'll join in and thank Paul for giving rationale to my irrationality. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second that.
and a second to postpone the nominations for vice chair until our next scheduled council meeting. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So we'll move that onto our next agenda. Okay, next item is the anticipated certification of Uintah, West Desert, and Jordan River Watershed Councils. So with that, let's see, let's cover Uintah's first.
We have these individuals here today.
Okay, we got Brett, Jeff, and Scott Chu. Oh, yeah, I just left him. He should be here.
Brett
No.
Coverdale's online, and I think Jeff is online too.
So Brett, would love to hear from you if yeah.
Okay,
Speak up.
thanks for having us today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm here, Jeff Crozier, the elected vice chair, and Peggy Killian, our secretary, is also on. And we had a good meeting, our first meeting, and good attendance, and we feel like we've got a good membership, and Peggy worked on the documents for the organizing of it. We have our officers elected, and we'd like your consideration on approving it.
Great, thank you. So we've all received a copy of the, the letter as well as some of the organizational documentation for this Uintah Watershed Council. Any questions, concerns, comments about their application?
Just give a brief comment complimenting the group of folks making up this Watershed Council. I think it's a good representative capture. We've had some questions and concerns with past Watershed Councils of making sure that we're truly getting a diverse representation, and I would say this certainly is, so thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
for the comment. Sterling, did you have a comment?
Yeah, if we could have Brett just comment on the 5 individuals that are listed under the liaisons to the council, 3 from BLM, 1 from Dugway, 1 from Hill Air Force Base. What can you share with us the council's insight or direction, thoughts on those entities, maybe others that were or were not considered?
Maybe you're looking at one of the other documents. The liaisons, we don't have that Hill Air Force Base or West Desert one that you mentioned. We have representative from the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, Christine Osborne. And I would like to just take a brief moment to say that she's done a great job organizing the Watershed group out here prior to this official legislation that organized it. We have a very active group out here thanks to her. So she's done a good job with that. We have Holly Mitchell from the Bureau of Land Management, Daryl Gilman from Utah Department of Ag and Food, Hank Barella from the BLM, Lars Christensen from the Forest Service, Mike Hyde from the Duchesne County Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, and Nathan Hall from Department of Environmental Quality. So that's our liaisons out here in Uintah.
Great, that's a great group. And so you said they've been quite active with the group already.
Yes, when I've been part of that group, and there's been a group of probably 40, I'm guessing, but I believe it's about 40 individuals that have been meeting for a couple years online and occasionally in person. So it's quite active already, and we're going to make sure we don't recreate a lot of stuff and just continue that effort.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Congratulations on that group. That's a great formation. Any other questions or comments from the council? Or yes, Warren?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one question I had is your Watershed Council boundaries. It just seems that the rivers and the people that drew boundaries for counties never got together and made this easy. You've got quite a number of counties where little corner of Emery County, you have Daggett County and so on. In looking at the members of the Watershed Council, I agree that it's a good, diverse stakeholders group. It looks very balanced. My only question is, are you comfortable with the geographic balance?
Yeah, well, I guess we're just getting going, so we'll see how it works out. The term Uintah is a little bit narrow for the broad county. It's not intended to be Uintah Basin or Uintah County.
Right.
It's more like everything in northeastern Utah and the upper Colorado drainage.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll see how it goes, I guess. Everybody was pretty comfortable at the meeting with that boundary.
I think it's fair to say, Mr. Chair, if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. And if there's no further discussion, I'll be bold and make the motion unless someone else wants to.
I have a note from our Attorney General, representative who reviewed this organizing document. And other than some minor clerical things, that could be cleaned up. Some of the notes from the template that we'd like to see removed, that we were good with that and would recommend that the council certify this council for.
Great. That's good. Good to know. And Mr. Chair, I'll defer if there's someone else that wants to step forward with a motion.
I'll be happy to make a motion to approve the Uintah Watershed Council.
Very good. Thanks, Ricky.
I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
Nathan seconded it. We got a motion and a second to accept the Uintah Watershed Council. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call on the motion. All in favor of the motion to accept the Uintah Watershed Council to the State Council?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I will get those clerical edits to the organization documents to the officers of the Uintah Watershed Council and make sure that they update those as soon as we can.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, for the sake of clarification, with that certification having been given, that would mean a member of that Watershed Council is able to participate in the balance of this meeting?
Yes, I believe so.
If they're present.
Yeah, so who was the,
Scott Chu?
oh, Scott Chu is their designated representative.
I don't believe he's here.
Let's issue a warrant.
Good luck. Yes. Yeah, but that's good point. Yes, if we have representatives on these, as they become certified, we definitely welcome them to be on the state council. Okay, next up is the West Desert Watershed Council. And we've got, let's see, West Desert, Paul. Paul, are you the spokesman? Yeah, you're the chair, so you're it. So what can you tell us about your application and the members that are there?
Thank you. We've met 4 times, and it's definitely a unique group. We cover a very large area. Most of our members are driving 3.5 hours to meet, unless you're there in Tooele. So that's the central location of where we're meeting. And I, of course, live down in Cedar City. So we're driving from Cedar City. And then we've also got members that are clear up in the northwest corner Box Elder area that drive about the same distance to meet there in Tooele. So it's a big area, and we have been educated. We appreciate the work from the Langdon group. They've been telling us about the other groups and how they've been going on boat tours and floating around the Great Salt Lake, or floating down the river, or going around the lake. And we're in the unique position of being in the West Desert, where we have none of that. So our tours will look a lot different and be a lot different. But we've put together and had elections within our own council. As was mentioned, they elected me to be chair. And since then, we've had a couple other elections as well. We've got Brett Palmer, who's currently there in the audience with you, who we've elected to sit on this council. And then Eric Rogers is the vice chair. And I can answer the question, I believe that it was directed, I think, to ours on the liaisons to our council, which there were the 3 from the BLM, 1 from Dugway and Hill Air. And primarily you're looking at a part of the state of Utah where a majority of it is federally owned, probably better than 70% is federally owned. And so you've got a range of those that sit at the state level from BLM, and a couple of regional BLM offices that are listed there. And then we've got Dugway and Hill Air Force areas that are out there in those areas too. And so that's why we have those liaisons. Some of our council members felt it was very important that we have their representation on there because of the amount of land mass that they own. And with that, we've worked over our documents and are just, I think, ready to see if you'd be willing to certify and I guess get our feet under our ground and start moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Paul. Okay, back to the council. Any questions or comments on their application?
I do have one question. So it looks like there is not tribal representation, although two recognized tribes are listed. Can you speak to that, to why that is and what the plan is going forward?
Yes, in fact, yeah, that one, we have had somebody reach out to us finally from the Indian Peaks tribe, Paiute, that is Mrs. Slayton, that will be sitting on that. And then we're also still waiting to hear back from the Goshute tribe. We've reached out, or I should say the Langdon group has reached out continually over the last probably about 4 or 5 months. Andy can speak more to that, but there's been a lot of outreach, and we've just left it open, knowing that those seats need to be filled and represented.
Great. Glad that's being addressed. Good point. Any other comments, questions? Yes, Warren.
Thank you, Scott. Paul, on the just a name I'm not familiar with, Fish and Wildlife, Ron Lindbergh, biologist. Can you describe his background, please?
I don't know Ron as well. I know that he's a biologist, and he is. I think that his spouse is a biologist as well and works for the division. But I personally don't know him.
Right. Well, seems like a good ad. The other thing, I just wanted to call you out on this, Paul. I'm sorry to have to do it, but it seems to me that a boat tour of Fish Springs would be entirely appropriate. It's right in the middle of, geographic center practically of the West Desert Watershed Council boundaries. So, just something for you to think about.
You just got to do it when there's
water
there. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find a raft that will that accommodate us and the amount of water that's there.
I wish you well with that. Well, I do have some provincial pride in this one, Mr. Chair. Yes.
I can imagine.
So but the motion I would make would be to make it a conditional approval. But if the vote is approved with the condition that the representative from that council would be able to join the meeting today, the one condition I would impose in the conditional approval motion, I would say approve conditional on filling the tribal spots and reporting back to us on the next meeting. So that's my motion.
Great. Have a motion?
I'll second that motion.
Second. Thank you, Nate.
Mr. Chair, if I might interrupt before
for
you
your
vote.
comments? Yes.
Just to give another overview, our
My
Attorney
oversight,
General
excuse me. Yes.
representative did review their organizing documents also. And similar to the Uintah Council, there were some clerical minor things that we will let them know about that we'd like to be fixed up, but it looked good. Or Marty, do you have additional?
Maybe a little more.
There were some clerical, but also a couple of things that were important. In Section 3, it indicated that a vacant seat of the council could be filled by a majority vote of sitting council members. I wasn't quite sure, that meant sitting in the meeting that day. And by statute, it's got to be, any action of the council has to be by a majority vote of its members, a majority of its members. So that section, I indicated or included some additional language that would fix that. A similar type thing is in section, Roman numeral 4, section 1 on a quorum. I read those first two sentences and it just didn't it was trying to give a hard number for what a majority would be, and I think those numbers could vacillate over time. So I just changed that a quorum consists of a majority of the council's membership and just leave it at that instead of putting numbers down. And then lastly, is Roman numeral 6, and it's amendments and adoption, and it said essentially that the council may amend these organizing documents by a majority vote of its members. That one was the right way. And I added, they said majority of votes consistent with applicable laws, regulations, policies, including the act, and I've added an approval by the Utah Watershed Council. And my thinking was there that if those documents have to be approved initially for certification, that amendments to them probably ought as well be approved to make sure that they continue to follow the requirements required in the act. So those would be the other two things, a little more substantive, that would need, those really need to be changed so that they're not pointing a direction that we can't go in terms of how votes are conducted.
Would the chair and the second consider an amended motion then?
Absolutely.
Thank you. The motion would be to give conditional certification with the corrections that council has noted and with the tribal position being filled. So with that, that would be the motion.
And Nick, okay, great, thanks, Nick. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any?
May I have a comment on that?
Paul?
Just a question before you have a vote. I'm sorry.
You bet. That's fine.
Just in regard, and I don't know if council would step back up. I just want to clarify one thing that we were really concerned about was within our representation was at least a minimum that we would have one representative from each county, and so. That was one of the major concerns. I think that may be incorporated, but I just wanted to make sure that could be included with what comments you had just suggested.
Yeah, whatever you want to do in terms as a council to deal with other members, there's enough latitude in statute to do that. If we're talking about what is a majority of the council, I just recommend that you don't put down a fixed number because in the future you might change the total number of members. You might add to it, and then that fixed number would no longer be applicable as the majority. So I was just recommending that you just say a quorum is a majority of the board's membership, whatever that might be at any given point in time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Let me please pose the question to Mr. Monroe. Given that change that you've just requested with the counties, what would your pleasure be? Should we move ahead with the motion for certification today, or do you want to put it back in the oven and take care of the county's provision as well? I expect that could be an additional condition on the motion. But what do you think is best for your council?
It sounds like to me they're pretty minor, and I don't see it being a big issue with them. I think that we can move forward with the certification, and I can bring this back up with our council and make those as changes.
Right. Thank you. Then, Mr. Chair, to be clear, then my motion is that we give the conditional certification subject to the new set of documents with the changes recommended by council and as noted by Mr. Monroe for our next meeting.
Okay, perfect. And second? All right, any further comments on or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the motion, on the motion, for certification of the West Desert Watershed Council, the conditional certification of the West Desert Watershed Council. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, and motion carries. And I might add that Brett Palmer is the Utah Watershed Council representative, so he is at this point is welcome to sit on this council.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question related to this?
Sure.
Do we have other councils that we have approved? It raised the question for me that have an amendment process that we have not, that maybe we need to take the same position on.
Or a conditional
Yeah.
approvals.
If they're going to amend their charter, do we need to make sure that it is approved by this council as well? I can't recall if we have or we haven't. I'm not trying to create an issue, but it might be worth looking into.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, the one that we mentioned is on the agenda today.
That's
I
Jordan.
think on the others we're clear. That's my memory, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can be too.
All right, thank you very much. The last one on the certification is the Jordan River Watershed Council. And we've got Soren, I believe, is representing that council.
Yes, so my name is Eric McCulley. I'm the chair of the Jordan River Watershed Council, elected, and Laura Briefer isn't available today. She is the vice chair and has been elected as the representative in this Watershed Council. Soren is the secretary. We have gone through the process here. We brought this forth last time, and there were some comments about the interests, listing the, agricultural interests. We were able to get an agricultural interest on the governing board of the Jordan River Commission. And then there were some bylaw changes with the governing board of the Jordan River Commission, which passed the governing board, I believe last week or in the last couple weeks. Okay. There were a few comments from the legal counsel on some administrative, the way it was written and kind of a clear representation of all of the different interests, which we're going to address. And Soren may have some additional information on that, but
Great.
Happy to answer any questions. Or the Jordan River Commission governing board is basically put forward as the Watershed Council, successfully working together in the Jordan Valley here for many years, and myself and many other people that are involved for decades now. So just a continuation of a lot of work we've done in the past. So Soren, do you have anything to add? Or
Eric summarized it very well, and appreciate him filling in Laura Briefer's absence today. Laura is also the vice chair of our local Watershed Council, and we also appointed a representative to the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council as that council becomes organized. Heidi Hoven, who serves on our Watershed Council representing the National Audubon Society, Rocky Mountain region, and she'll be the representative as that council becomes organized as well.
Great. Wow. Okay.
Has the council reviewed the comments from Martin?
Yes, we've got them. They
Okay.
should have reviewed them. So we'll ask if there's any comments or questions about those edits that were done on the application. So Marty, yeah, if you've got any insight, that would be great.
Yeah, in my review, and the Jordan River Watershed Council's kind of taken a unique approach of incorporating their organizing document within their bylaws of the commission, which I don't see any big issues as long as we kind of have the processes that are directed by statute built within them, which I see they are. With a couple real minor exceptions. Well, what I mean minor is they can be fixed easily.
Yeah.
One of them is in their bylaw section 12.1, it states that the governing board of the commission will be the Jordan River Watershed Council. And then in another section, 12.5, it says interlocal agency and ex officio representatives to the governing board shall be members. So you've got two provisions that conflict, and one of them we just got to figure out which one you want to use. And probably have the caveat on that, in as much as we're kind of just adopting a body that's already existing, is that each of those people are eligible under the statute. That is, they live or work in the watershed, or they have a water right, or use water within the watershed. And from there, so that'd be the first one, and probably you could just tell us which one, who is going to be the council.
Yeah, so let me, go ahead, Mark.
Mr. Chair, before we leave that, good catch. I had also looked at section 5.4 where it talks about exit, and then that, I think, cross-references into section 12 that you were talking about. Because there it says ex officio members, and I'm not sure that these, as currently written, it distinguishes between a member agency under the Interlocal Cooperation Act compared to a member of the Watershed Council, if that makes sense. Because I think under your interlocal agreement, you have agency members, but not individuals as members. But here you refer to members, and I wonder if there's needs to be a distinction in those terms. And if the best example I saw of that was that in section 5.4, but then that carries on down into section 12. I think it's an easy fix unless it gets snagged on the way the interlocal agreement's written. And we didn't have that to look at, so I'm just asking the question because I don't know quite how it would land under your interlocal agreement.
So let me try and clarify a little bit. In the interlocal agreement is where the membership of the Jordan River Commission is established, not in the bylaws. The bylaws designate representation of the participating agencies. We have kind of two classes of participants in the commission. We have interlocal agencies whose elected or appointed legislative bodies or boards accept the provisions of the interlocal agreement and sign on. And those have representation. Typically it's an elected official or an appointed officer or something like that. And then that body of interlocal agency members appoints what we call ex officio partner organizations, and they also have representatives. These include industry and business and other stakeholders. So part of the provision in section 5.4 is to align those representatives that are not interlocal agencies with the provisions of the Watershed Council so that all of those interests of the Watershed Council are represented. And the difference between 12.1 and 12.5 is that it was the intention of the Jordan River Commission to be the Watershed Council, and that's what 12.1 states. 12.5 is to clarify basically that the representatives for both the interlocal agencies and the representatives for the ex officio organizations are basically considered equal members of the Watershed Council. There are classifications of those membership for the commission in that ex officio can't serve as officers of the commission. And we just wanted to clarify, and that's what we attempted to do in 12.5, that for purposes of the Watershed Council, they're considered equal. So that's the distinction between 12.1 and 12.5.
So the Watershed Council will be comprised of both the governing board and the interlocal agency and ex officio, or is one subsumed into the other? I guess
the governing board includes representatives of interlocal agencies and ex officio partner organizations. And so the intention for the governing board to be the Watershed Council also is clarified in 12.5, that both the ex officio and the interlocal representatives are equal members of the Watershed Council.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Knowing the foundation helps
Now
you
that you've
understand the
explained
structure.
it, from the document it didn't
and
make sense, but I mean, now that you've explained it.
To the first item on your agenda, or on your comments about, eligibility, I think when we actually put together the formal roster, now that we've identified and kind of clarified, we also have state agencies that participate in the commission and are voting members, and they're not voting, state and federal agencies are not voting members of the Watershed Council. But they can be advisors or liaisons, I think is what they're called in the act. So I think that's more of an administrative or clerical clarification. When we put together the roster, we'll identify the name, that they're eligible by being, they live or work within the council boundaries. And we'll also identify the different interests that are represented, that are identified in the act. And we'll have quite a few that are other, because states or cities and counties are not specifically referenced in the act, although I know you've had some conversation about that being a provision that might be clarified in future legislative updates.
When will the roster be made? The roster is going to be the actual
The actual
members
members.
of the Watershed Council,
Yeah.
which is going to be a subset of the Jordan River Commission governing board and ex officio members and all of that.
Yeah, so right now we have a roster of our governing board, and what I'll do is put together a roster of our Watershed Council. The names on the roster will be the same names, but their interest and their representation will be clarified in the roster for the Watershed Council.
Chair, this is Mark Stratford. Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
So in section 12.1, I'm wondering, Soren, if it would be appropriate, rather than saying that the governing board of the Jordan River Commission will serve as the Jordan River Watershed Council, if we can just remove those words, the governing board, and just say, as provided in the act, the Jordan River Commission will serve as the Jordan River Watershed Council. And Marty, I don't know if that would help at all with what you saw as potential confusion between the governing board versus the individual members.
Any explanation of what those two groups are and how they interact would help. I mean, have it in the writing.
Yeah.
Because it's not readily apparent, from just reading it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because because I think that what they're saying in 12.1 is what the request is that we recognize the Jordan River Commission essentially as the Jordan River Watershed Council, subject to them complying with their bylaws and submitting the roster of members.
Well, I don't refer to the commission, it's the governing board of the commission. That's the members of the Watershed Council.
And I think the clarification of the governing board, because when in some of our previous discussions with the Watershed Council and the consulting team, we also have some subcommittees or committees of the commission. And so this is really to clarify that it's the governing board and not, for example, our technical advisory committee or some other committee of the commission. It's the governing board that becomes the membership of the council.
Right, and that's what 12.5 says.
Yeah.
12.5 says interlocal agency and ex officio representatives to the governing board shall serve as members.
What will really be helpful, I think, is knowing who these members are of the Watershed Council. I mean, that will, here we're broad brushing it with they're members of in a group that currently exists, whereas we get the actual list, that would help define it and make it, I think, pretty easy.
It seems that will help.
Yeah. And then the last thing was similar to the West Desert is there's a provision in 12.10, it's Article 18 states that an action of the Watershed Council or the governing board must be taken in a meeting with a quorum present by affirmative vote of a majority of the members present. You just need to strike that word present and just say by a majority vote of the members. Yeah. And then we'll get it aligned with statute. It's interesting because I read that statute the first time and I thought that is odd that they're saying a majority of the members and not of those present, which would be a quorum. It has to be at least a quorum. But read it again, it says that, and it did it for the state council, and it does it, it repeats it again for the local council. So apparently that was intentional, not a slip of the pen.
Yeah, that one was purely my oversight, not realizing that the votes are the entire council, whether they're present or not, to take actions.
It is.
So we'll clarify that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Warren.
one other question, Marty, and as we talked about the West Desert document, you mentioned if the document's amended, they should come back for recertification of the document. Do we want to have a similar provision here, and would that be acceptable?
Sure.
I would think it'd be useful in all of those. I mean, I've reviewed all of the ones that have been certified so far. I don't remember seeing it, but it's also, I could have maybe slipped past it, just didn't catch me at that time of what it was saying. But I think that'd be a good thing. I mean, minor amendments may be of no relevance to the state council, but any amendment could have some fairly major substantive amendments. And if those amendments then diverge from some of the standards that are required in statute, that would be an issue. And this council here would be able to at least oversee that and make sure that whatever amendments are made are always consistent with the act.
In this case, should that be limited to Article 12 that has to come back to this board as opposed to any amendment to their bylaws?
Good catch.
Yes, just 12, just watershed matters.
So, right. So just to make it clear, wherever they put that in there, that coming back to us is for changes to Article 12.
Good.
Does that sound good, Eric? We are anticipating, after we had our discussion and voted on the bylaws amendments last week, that there might be some fine tuning once Marty had a chance to review these. So we've already got this teed up for our December board meeting, Watershed Council meeting for these minor tweaks. So we should be ready to go.
Good.
At the next meeting.
I have in mind a historical photo of the 747 with the space shuttle being transported on top of it. Is that sort of what we want to make sure those clamps are really, really there, but it's a powerful organization the way you put it together.
Yeah.
Thanks. Mr. Chair, maybe we should get instruction from Marty on what's the appropriate motion for today, or should we defer until these changes are made? What would you recommend?
Well, I would recommend, I mean, we could do a contingent approval as long as they make sure any votes they have of the Watershed Council are done by a majority of the members. That one's fixed there. I think we got a better idea of what the Watershed Council memberships look like, but may not have a complete list of names and interests, and whether that would be something you would want to look at and see as for a final approval. But I think, like others, I think we could do it contingent that their votes are taken by majority of the members, and that they've got a complete council put together, and then have those remaining documents provided another time. Or if you want to be a little more, strict on it, is when they come back with everything that's in a complete form, then we'll do the actual certification. But I think either way will get you where you need to be.
I might just suggest, since we've already been conditionally certified pending these, you may not need to take any action, and we'll just continue operating under that conditional until we have these fine-tuning
That's a
changes
great point,
made.
because it was conditional the last council.
And let's see, I had another thought. Now it escapes me. Anyway, we'll do this cleanup, and we can just continue this to the next meeting, which presumably will be in January, and we can finalize things then. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I already indicated in an email to Todd earlier today, Todd Stoneley, that for purposes of compliance, we will, if we vote on anything between now and when we're fully certified, we will conduct our procedures as if this change is already made, and we will look at the full council and not just members present as we typically do. Good. So we'll put that into place, and I'll notify our chair, who's here, that will operate under that procedure going forward.
One step at a time.
We're getting so close.
We're getting there.
So
We're getting
close.
there.
Thank you. Thank you, Soren, Eric.
And I need to
Appreciate
update
that.
my metaphor so it's not an antiquated piece of machinery, right?
Thank you all.
So, thank you, Soren. I don't think any further motion is required on this particular application till we meet again in January. So we appreciate those that have presented, and we welcome the newly certified members. All right, next topic is the discussion about the formation of the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council. We've got Dan or Andy will talk to us.
Andy's here.
Oh, Andy?
Yeah, I'll get you back on track for the agenda here because we have this very short update. This is relative to the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council and how that plays into the ongoing Great Salt Lake efforts, particularly the Basin Integrated Plan. And the update is simply that it's still in progress. Nothing has been decided, and there's lots of new structures and organizations going there, so nothing's been decided, and we're just kind of pushing through here, but in progress is the update.
Okay, all right. Very good. Appreciate that.
There you go.
Any schedule? Anticipated
Oh, I was trying to
schedule?
walk away, as soon as we can. Stuff's got to get rolling fast.
Yeah, true.
Next month or two. Certainly we'll have an update for you, I would think.
January.
An update by January, maybe resolution by March, so.
Okay. Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, on that thought,
Yes.
before we change topics, could Todd or the appropriate person speak to the timetable? Does the statute require us to
good point.
fully assemble ourselves by a certain date? And if another question is, with the approvals, conditional approvals of today, where are we in the, what's remaining?
Yeah, what's left, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
Todd?
thank you. I'd be happy to do that. So the statute does not require that all local watershed councils be organized even at all. They don't have to be organized. It's up to the local folks to determine whether they want to have a watershed council. I think most of them have indicated that they do, so we're anticipating that all of them eventually will. And we're working systematically with our consultant, the Langdon Group, to get those organized. As of today, assuming all of these councils are at least partially or conditionally certified, we will have 6 local watershed councils up and operating and have already been meeting even prior to certification today.
So it looks like we've got
So how many remaining?
possibly 3 more.
So there are
3 or 4
total
more.
There are a total of 12. So there will be all of the 11 area planning or areas that we have as a Division of Water Resources. So right now we have the Bear, the Weber, the Jordan, and the Utah Lake and West Desert, plus Uintah Basin. So that's 6. The remaining ones are the West Colorado River Watershed, the Southeast Colorado River Watershed, the Sevier River Watershed, the Cedar Beaver, and the Kanab Creek Virgin.
Right.
And then the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council. So there are those 6 remaining that still have yet to be formed.
And is the Landon Group working with all 12?
Obviously, can't do them all at the same time, so we're kind of doing them sequentially, but they have met and reached out to people in all of the areas of the state to gauge their interest and let them know about councils and that we're working to organize them.
And you seem optimistic that all 12 want to be a part of this group?
Yes.
Yeah, great question, Sterling. That's good to hear. All right, moving on. We've got a couple of great presentations. So our first presentation will be on the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan and thoughts from the Great Salt Lake Commissioner. And so we've got Laura and Brian here to talk to us, so welcome.
I'm going to let Commissioner Steed kick it off with his thoughts. And if we could pull up the presentation, then we'll have a few slides to.
I thought I'd shared it, but let me try that again.
So in the spirit of integration, we will be presenting together.
Our slides are
and after
integrated.
exactly they are, and after that thrilling discussion, I mean, I can tell you what that was something. I can tell that we've got a nationwide attention on this. 2 things. First of all, just so you know, I don't find it sufficient to have just 2 cameras. I have to bring my own camera as well. We have a documentarian here today. The Great Salt Lake is something that is generating national interest, and it's something that's generating national interest on a daily basis. And surprisingly, we see this not only from our nationwide media sources, we also see it from global media sources. I have been interviewed since my appointment for media sources as far away as Japan, as well as from Norway and other places, which I just wouldn't have thought is something. But it goes to show how important getting the Great Salt Lake right is. Let's go to the next slide if we can. So as you all know, the Great Salt Lake has been in a gradual decline, really, since, we can go back one more. Really since its high points in the 1980s, and as you watch the graphic and the decline, you see a loss of water as well as an exposed lake bed that all of us are concerned about. There's a variety of reasons we're concerned, the first of which would happen to be because we rely on the Great Salt Lake for a variety of things that many folks don't even realize they rely on the Great Salt Lake for, including magnesium that's often alloyed into aluminum, which then allows for rigidity, as well as now increasingly we have interest in lithium for cell phone batteries and for other important things. And then all of us have consumed part of the Great Salt Lake, whether we know it or not, in our lifetime because if you've eaten a fruit or a nut from California, chances are that's been fertilized by sulfate of potash. And if you've eaten one of those brine shrimp, actually that's not a brine shrimp, if you've eaten one of the shrimp, if that shrimp is farmed, chances are it has been fed by brine shrimp out of the Great Salt Lake. This is a $1 billion+ industry and per year, and that's something just to be aware of. But really, I think what we're even more concerned about is the ecological value of the lake. And I include this slide intentionally. I know it's a little creepy. That's our state bird feasting on brine flies. And I know, Ricky, it's exciting. But here's the rub. We have millions of migratory waterfowl that come through on a yearly basis. Those migratory waterfowl really have very few other places to go now, and so the likelihood of having some of those waterfowl be imperiled is something that we have to track very carefully. And just so you know, like all saline lakes, the Great Salt Lake has a Goldilocks problem. That Goldilocks problem means that if salinity gets too high, we lose brine shrimp and brine flies. Last year, at the end of 2022, we were seeing very, very low numbers of brine flies. We were seeing very, very low numbers of brine shrimp. And as a result of that, we got really concerned. And so it's something that I think that this is the consummate problem for water in the state right now. If we don't get it right, we're going to face long-term consequences. And I would say it's not just an ecological problem. These issues will end up causing all of us consternation if it goes to a federal solution from an ESA listing, or as we noted in the previous slide, when it comes to that exposed lake bed, that is all area that will be eventually governed potentially by the Clean Air Act. And as we have a more exposed lake bed and that lake bed remains exposed for longer, we will have more weathering of that. We'll have more particulate matter kick up as a result of that. And the likelihood we have a regulatory solution forced on us through the auspices of the Clean Air Act. Just so you know, the Office of the Legislative Audit General just recently came out with a report saying that just the infrastructure on what we have currently to cover the dust problem, they estimate it to be a $1.5 billion problem just to get the infrastructure in place, plus an additional $15 million annually just to manage that infrastructure. Just for the problems we have today, they estimate that problem goes up in severity and cost if we increase the loss of, or if we see decreasing lake levels. And so this is something that we have to get right. And that goes to the point where we all have to be together on this. We all have to be mindful of what's next. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Laura, who can tell us more. No, that's not Dr. Doom. That's Dr. Reality at this point. Thank you.
All right, Brian did a good job talking about the importance of the lake and the recent decreasing levels, and I just wanted to highlight the fact that even though we have had a monumental rise this year with 5.5-foot increase in the south arm, we're nowhere near a place where we want to be comfortable and relax as far as, Great Salt Lake is not saved with one remarkable water year. This graph shows that with that rise, we're still toying with the lake level elevations that we had in 2020, which is when we started to set the consecutive historic lows during that year, or 2021 and 2022. So we're definitely not out of the woods. The state is not behaving like we're out of the woods. We have been so busy. One of the things that was prompted with these historic low lake levels was the initiation of a Great Salt Lake integrated water assessment, and so that's what I have been living and breathing the last couple of months, and so that is underway, and I'm going to share with you today what that is. And so I thought I'd kick the illustration off with the discussion about a puzzle. Like, have you ever sat down to do a puzzle with yourself, your family, and you're all excited to get to work, and you get all the way done, or nearly all the way done, and you've got missing puzzle pieces? The picture is incomplete, and I think that's how we think about water in the Great Salt Lake watershed. We don't have all of the knowledge, we don't have all of the tools, we don't have a complete understanding of surface and groundwater and how it moves throughout the basin. We may have in the Jordan River Basin, we may have a particular model or tool, but we don't have that same tool in the Weber River Basin. We're not using apples and apples when we're comparing water within the basin and how it moves. And so we want to have that complete picture before we can make informed decisions about, and to help us make informed decisions in the basin. So we've kind of highlighted the need for the plan these last couple of years. The basin resources have been remarkably stressed. We have a lot of previous studies and plans that have been done in Great Salt Lake watershed, but they haven't really talked to each other, and they haven't connected with each other, and that's what this plan hopes to do. And like I said, there's no consensus on one method or one data. So while one water conservancy district may use one tool, another district may use another tool, and those tools, the data from those tools don't talk to each other. And so we want to help work with everybody to build a tool that they can get on board with and use to understand how water moves in the basin. And planning at this level has never been done before. There's lots of, Great Salt Lake level planning going. There's lots of planning within the basin, but taking a 36,000 mile or 36,000 square mile view has not really been done before. So we're taking a stab at that with the hope that we can come up with a vision and create some steps to make sustainable water use in the basin a reality. We need informed decision making. So when people come to Brian, Commissioner Steed, and they say, we need to move water here or do this, we need to be able to say, yes, that's a good idea. For this reason, we have this tool. We've evaluated the scenarios. We know that this is a good idea. We don't have that right now. And then we need a direction or a list of actions. We also are getting calls on the daily about what people can do to help, or what more could be done to protect the lake, ensure sustainability, and so this project will do that. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen overnight. The overall goal of the integrated water, the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan is to ensure a resilient water supply for Great Salt Lake and all water uses in the watershed. While the low lake levels of Great Salt Lake in the past couple of years prompted this project, it's not all about Great Salt Lake. It is about ensuring water, the adequate water for users in the basin as well. And we're looking at this 36,000 square mile project through this integrated lens. We're looking at the Great Salt Lake needs. How much water does Great Salt Lake need? How much water is available in the basin in general, and what do our communities need? So these are the 6 building blocks, or I call them building bubbles because those aren't blocks, that we're using, the lens that we're trying to use to figure out how much water is needed in the basin. And super teeny font, shouldn't be expected to read this. There's a lot of information on the next couple slides, but I should have started off by saying that this bill or this project was prompted by HB 429 during the last legislative session, with the goal to identify and evaluate the best management practices that may be used to provide a reliable water supply that meets water quality objectives, agricultural water objectives, accommodate anticipated growth and economic development, and provide adequate flow to Great Salt Lake and its wetlands and the ecological functions. And then remarkably, at the same time that we got funding through the Utah legislature for this project, we applied for a WaterSmart grant for a basin study with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and right around the same time, right around Christmas, we were awarded the gift of the Bureau of Reclamation's support for a basin study. So we're integrating those two projects into one super project, which is called this Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan. But the basin study is very similar, and they want us to provide a thorough trade-offs analysis to help decision makers balance water supply and demand and avoid the deterioration of agricultural industry and ecosystems. So we're integrating those two projects. We know that there's a ton of groups doing work already. There's a lot of large-scale projects going on as the lake has generated so much attention. We have the USGS Saline Lakes Assessment, the Great Salt Lake Watershed Enhancement Trust that was kicked off by Speaker Wilson's bill last year, 2 years ago. Yeah. Time's flying. And then we have work from the Great Salt Lake Strike Team that's been done, in addition to other projects that, large-scale planning projects that we know we need to integrate into our integrated plan. So this is just a look at the timeline. Right now, we are taking into consideration all of the existing work into our work plan. Right now, the plan is so big, the intentions are so large that we're developing a plan for the plan, which sounds really pretty cheesy, but right now we're about to wrap up the plan for the plan, and then we'll be moving on to the phase 2 of the basin plan, and that is the technical piece where we start to build the models, refine the models, conduct the studies, develop the trade-off scenarios, run those. All the while, we'll be talking with groups throughout the watershed and trying to get a sense of what they're supportive of, what they are interested in learning more about, with the goal to create defensible solutions that will come up in an action plan.
And I'll just say that coming up with the plan for the plan is actually quite timely and important. As part of my role as the Great Salt Lake Commissioner, I've been asked to put together a strategy on how we manage the Great Salt Lake and how we preserve the health of the Great Salt Lake. That plan is due to the governor, or that strategy is due to the governor on November 30th. Is the latest date I have to do that. And so we are taking that plan for the plan and saying this is something we can work on in the medium term as well, in addition to the short-term actions we have, because ultimately getting better information is going to be key to making better decisions.
Perfect. Yeah, we're working on these short-term actions now that Brian can take in his strategic plan, and then looking more long-term in the very beginning of 2027, we're going to have some recommendations that may come in the form of changes in communication, education, legal and policy actions, operational actions, infrastructure, organizational, economic, and then perhaps some additional monitoring and research. But this is very much a short, medium, and long-term initiative, and I say into perpetuity. I mean, we're never going to be done understanding more about water use in the basin. So I mentioned what a collaborative initiative this is. We're not going to be able to do this without help from people in the basin and people who know the resource as well. Running this ship, we have the commissioner here at the top, but the Division of Water Resources, and together with the Bureau of Reclamation, with their participation through the basin study, we are kind of leading this effort to help us and advise us. We have two groups. We have the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan Steering Committee, and those are stakeholders throughout the watershed representing a range of different groups. And we have been meeting, I think we've had 3 or 4 meetings now, just trying to get people up to speed on what the work plan is, and then what we envision the next couple of years looking like. And then we also have a federal and state advisory, government agency advisory group that's helping us out. And then if you look down in the really strangely yellow shaped. I think that looks like brine shrimp, actually.
It
like
kind of
your,
does, actually, yeah.
Your picture. We're going to have all of this data. We're creating water budgets for each of the basins, and we're going to need the technical expertise of each of the members of those basins. And so we have the West Desert Steering Committee, for example, Weber River. And funny thing is we all have watershed councils that are, comprised of each of those areas. And so what we're recommending, I think the recommendation in the work plan will be that we use the watershed councils and all of you here today to help us get the message out, collect information, and just play a role and guide us and let us know what you know throughout this planning process. But we think the Watershed Council is a great venue for action for creating these water budgets for each of the watersheds. Okay, just really quickly, back to the integrated approach. What we've been doing with this work plan is trying to answer these questions, like how do we wrap our head around how much water we all need to ensure a resilient water supply? So we did a gap analysis for each of these building bubbles. So Great Salt Lake needs, water supply needs. And what we did, this is just an example from the Great Salt Lake hydrology, is how do we know what we know about Great Salt Lake and the hydrology there. And so we've identified what projects are ongoing and funded. Those are the green ones, blue, unfunded, but need to happen. And so we've done that, like I said, for all 6 of these building blocks. And we've created a gap analysis, also something that's not necessary and impossible to read. But what we've done for each of these bubbles is to have the strengths of the current programs, the gaps, where could we improve the data, the information, and then what is the recommendations that we could have moving forward. And that's going to be the kind of the meat of the work plan, is the proposed area of capacity development, and those will take the form of additional tasks, studies, and program development. And so right now we're just kind of at the tail end of compiling that program list, and we're going to have it out for folks real soon. So just this kind of hints at what Brian was talking about the big picture. Today we're working on the work plan. We'll be developing scenarios and testing strategies, refining models tomorrow and beyond, making recommendations that can go into the future. And this all just kind of fleshes out what I just said.
But with lots more arrows.
Yes, lots of arrows. Hold on, I think we're almost there. Hold on. Oh, okay. Ta-da, the last slide. So I mentioned that we're wrapping up the work plan. We'll be looking forward to a mid-November release. In fact, the November 15th presentation to the legislature is really the date that we're hoping to use to kick off the rollout of the work plan. We'll be presenting the draft work plan to them. We'll have an open house in early December. A 45-day review period. We do acknowledge that it's over the holiday season, and so that could be a bit awkward, but we want to give people time to consider what we've provided to them. And then we're going to start contracting and start all of the individual projects that are going to build this, the plan and the recommendations in January of 2024. And with that.
So one last thing I'll just throw in, and one of the reasons there was some active discussion about where we are on the Great Salt Lake Steering Committee is because we're doing some intentional thought on what should happen there. And I'll just note, and I'll bring into my lovely world, when I'm looking at just the things that I've been tasked, I'm sitting at the top of Great Salt Lake issues. Just the government agencies that on the state side that I'm forced to deal with. Forestry, fire, and I get to deal with. Thank you. Get to deal with forestry, fire, and state lands on the sovereign lands that the state manages, as well as the mineral issues on the Great Salt Lake. Division of Water Resources on the planning side and on the water development side. Division of Water Rights on the allocation of water rights and on adjudication of where those water rights stand. state parks on the 2 state park units that encompass much of the area of the lake, Division of Rec, that also has the management authority of the recreational amenities on the lake, and Division of Wildlife Resources that manages the brine shrimp plus all of the, many of the surrounding wetlands, as well as the wildlife resources that are reliant thereon. And that's just in DNR. In DEQ, we get to deal with Division of Drinking Water, Division of Water Quality, and Division of Air Quality, all which have different parts that touch the lake. And then we can move to the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food that has a Division of Conservation and managing currently the Agricultural Optimization Program. And that's just on the state side. Add on the federal partners, and we could add a separate list of that. And then we have existing structures like the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council that's been around for some time and been doing pretty meaningful work. I can just say this is a very noisy space, and my plea to you all is that we help maybe minimize some of that noise by not creating an additional council, but utilizing maybe the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council in that role. And we'll be working on legislation to do something and make sure that we have the pieces in place that can make that functional and meet the needs of what was intended by the Great Salt Lake Basin Advisory Council. So does that make sense? So with that, yes, sir.
Eric, Stewart,
Yeah.
Sterling.
I know your presentation is to keep it general. You're not here to launch into the weeds of all of your many, many tasks here, but I do have 2 for sure questions, and a third is optional.
Okay.
Brian, you quickly glazed over endangered species in your remarks, and the opening slide of the lake changing elevations over time. Is there any plant or animal species now that is on the list, threatened, endangered, as a result of the lake?
So
losing water?
currently, the answer is no to that. We are watching 2 species very carefully, just being honest. The one on the right is called the Wilson's phalarope. It's a wading bird, heavily reliant on brine flies. If the salinity tips on that, the north arm of the lake right now is essentially biologically extinct. You don't have any brine fly or brine shrimp production on the north arm. Reason being that the salinity is too high. South arm, if that tips, then you lose those brine shrimp, brine fly production. Wilson's phalarope, about 80% of habitat remaining is within the Great Salt Lake. And so that's something that we're watching carefully. The bird on the left is the eared grebe. The eared grebe migrates in very large numbers. Some molt on the lake, others just come to stop by and fuel up on the lake. Either way, if there are not brine shrimp in the lake, they don't have sufficient food stuff to make it on their long journey, and as a result, may have higher than the normal mortality. We're watching both those species and others. I have heard tell that there are groups that are drafting listing petitions. I don't know if they will drop or not. Ultimately, this last year was actually a really good year. We were able to capture a lot of water on the south arm. We were able to drop salinity levels pretty sizably. If the winter does not behave well and we don't get a lot of water, my guess is we might have more scrutiny on that front. And that's I don't know what's going to happen.
No plant species that you're aware of?
Currently not listed, no.
And then secondly, similarly is research. I'm increasingly more and more familiar with the research being done on the Utah Lake, and there's an argument that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing in terms of research. Lots of research being done, but it's not necessarily coordinated. Can you speak to that on the Great Salt Lake?
And I think that's been something that we have all been concerned about. In fact, that was the origin on the Great Salt Lake Strike Team when we started the Great Salt Lake Strike Team last year, simply because we needed to have that research coordinated, and we had to find out what we knew, how we knew it, and what those other gaps might be on what we still don't know. I think that the Basin steering plan as well, the integrated steering plan, will certainly inform on that as well, because there is real scientific research to be done regarding, so for instance, the interplay between surface water and groundwater on the Great Salt Lake is something that is understudied and we need to have more information on. Now, that being said, when it comes to Utah Lake, to your point, yeah, we need to have that expanded beyond where we are on Great Salt Lake now and taken into the other important water, delivery areas that we know are there, Utah Lake or Bear Lake, or name your reservoir choice.
And then I'll exercise my third option here. Do you have staff or do you have resources within this department or the other departments that you're forced, unquote, to deal with?
Not forced.
That
That
are-
was the misstatement.
that-
The pleasure of dealing with.
That are targeted to help you tell your story.
So, yes and no. Okay, I'm going to overshare here, so don't quote me on it. And I know it's all recorded, so I guess that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's too late. I made the intentional decision on taking on this role not to create another government agency, and the reason being is because we have this exhaustive list, or not exhaustive, but we have a very extensive list of researchers and workers already on this area. I think my job is more to coordinate that effort rather than create new, right? And so I work almost on the daily with Laura and a variety of other folks here within the building and within DEQ and UDAF. So yes, but they're not dedicated to the Great Salt Lake Commissioner's office. We will be staffing up with a very small office. We'll have a deputy commissioner as well as a number of staff, but our intent is to keep it lean so that we can work with the existing infrastructure that we've got rather than creating more and duplicating those efforts.
But I'm asking more specifically of combating the criticism. Do you have a marketing or I can't think of the right
Is that PR firm?
PR, thank you.
We do not have a PR firm identified yet, but it's something to consider. The reality is this: we've done quite a lot on the lake. In the last 2 years, we've seen remarkable movement on it, but it's also a very big problem. So we just got to be aware that while, yes, we've done quite a lot and we have made progress, that I can tell you when I sat in this room with a different hat as the director of the Department of Natural Resources 3 years ago, I wouldn't have thought we could have made as much progress as we have made on these issues that we have made. But I am also a realist in saying I don't think we're far enough yet. And so we will still be working on that front and trying to do as much good work as we can in order to prevent outcomes which none of us can live with. Sterling, you look unconvinced. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you for laying out the simplicity of this issue and how we're going to solve it. I did have
it wasn't the discussion before, right? Wait till I bring the lawyers in. It's going to be great.
I was actually just wondering how Idaho and Wyoming water users are being, are they part of the program? Or are you in discussion with them because, they're part of it?
It's an excellent question. The Bear River, which is the largest inflow, certainly does cross through both Wyoming and Idaho. To date, those states have been less willing to engage in a discussion regarding the Great Salt Lake. Part of that has been legal in nature. The Bear River Compact ends where the Great Salt Lake begins. And so therefore there's been some unwillingness to say, from those states to say that's a directly Utah problem. The truth is, friends, if we have a listing, that is not a respecter of state boundaries, and they'll be part of the solution as well on that. And so we are starting those conversations. We're not as far as I'd like to be, but that is the direction we're trending, yes.
And I might add that we do have representatives from Idaho and Wyoming on the Great Salt Lake Basin Planning Initiative.
Thanks. I have a comment from Mark Stratford. Go ahead, Mark.
So, Commissioner Steed, to your observation of not creating additional noise, it sounded to me like a suggestion that somehow the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council should be associated with GSLAC. If that was the case, somewhat maybe like the 747 that Warren described, to head that direction, if that makes sense, seems like it might require some legislative changes to either the GSLAC statute or to the Watersheds Council Act, or both of them. Is that kind of what you're suggesting? Is that GSLAC maybe is able to fill multiple roles, but in the Watershed Council, maybe with the representatives from the local watershed councils?
That's correct. So it would require a change of legislation of both acts. And I think that in the spirit of simplifying rather than creating additional noise, it may work. But I think that we're here to discuss and happy to have that conversation about how we can make that work best.
Yeah, great. Well, I think it's a great topic to at least consider and figure out how we would move forward if that was, in everybody's opinion, the best way to go.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. And just to comment on the topic of not creating new organizations, I support strongly Laura's description of the steering committees being the watershed councils, the local watershed councils, because another group would just not help.
Yeah.
It's just not going to help. But so it makes a lot of sense.
Noted, thank you, that's helpful.
Go ahead, Warren.
The point you just made was one of the founding, the principal reasons for founding the Watershed Council system throughout the state, including the Great Salt Lake Watershed Council.
Yes.
And I agree that getting those two tied together is going to take some legislative work, and there is some work being done on that already.
Yeah.
So.
Good point.
That's why when you were asking about the timeline, I was like, March, less legislative session? I don't know.
Gotcha. Yeah. Any other comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the other question I had is you have various agencies, some of which, well, all of which are represented on this council. The attendance today would not reflect that, unfortunately. But as various efforts, and I'll point to the one I'm most familiar with, which is the ag optimization piece. Knowing when and how to get on the train is something that, frankly, we need direction on. So I suppose that's part of what will be coming out in the plan of how to build the plan.
Correct. Yep.
All right, good.
Yeah, and as you and I have spoken before, I mean, it's going to take all of us.
It is. Absolutely. It's got to be a full team effort.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner Steed and Laura, for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
It was very good, very enlightening. So
Thanks for having us.
appreciate that. Absolutely.
And I'm happy to come back and update as necessary on the basin planning efforts, but don't want to
Yes, we would.
bore you all.
We would like that.
And I would happily come back if Sterling smiled ever. But
oh, you're asking too much.
Can I just counter that for just 1 second? I've got my brow going on, Brian, because I'm trying to visualize, are you the space shuttle or the 747?
yes.
I ask seriously, which one is the mothership and which one is the carrier?
Yeah.
I'm not understanding that relationship as it relates to you and your newly office and these watershed councils and this myriad of other councils out there.
Sterling, you haven't asked about mission control, by the way.
Listen,
That's more likely.
I think that it's probably more on the mission control than it is otherwise.
Yeah, I would think
to be very honest. But that being said, this is a large problem, and it's a large problem that's going to take involvement from lots of different parts. And it's unfortunate. I mean, you mentioned that. I remember as a kid being schlepped off to Hill Air Force Base, right, for the opportunity to go see. And I don't even think it was a real space shuttle. I think it was the demo that they were showing it could be done. This is going to take more than participating, is what I'm saying. We're all going to have to be part of building this thing. So I'm looking for your help too. Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Great discussion. We've got to move on the agenda, so I appreciate the discussion though. So our next presentation is on shared stewardship, and we've got Grace, I believe, that will present to us. Thanks, Grace.
It's green. Okay, perfect.
Yes,
Hopefully you can all hear me. Thanks so much for having me. Let me know if I'm not speaking in the mic correctly. Just to give, I was asked to give a bit of a primer on shared stewardship. Some of you may be familiar with shared stewardship as a program, but I just wanted to provide an update because there really is a pretty obvious nexus between shared stewardship and the watershed councils. And I'm sure that there's a lot of what we're currently working on that we would use a lot of, or we could use a lot of your input and expertise. So just, backing up quite a bit to, how we've gotten to the situation that we're in with our forests and our forested lands in Utah. We've had a practice in, for the past 100 years of just really misunderstanding the role of wildfire in our ecosystems. And because of that, we've ended up with these really overcrowded forested lands all across Utah that are just full of what we call dead and down wood, trash wood, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not the prettiest name for it, but really it's wood that if there were a wildfire to start, whether naturally or because of human error, it would lead to some type of catastrophic wildfire event. So, and that's not just because of fire suppression. I mean, we've seen that there's just a changing ecosystem, and so it's led to these overstocked forests. And it's not just in Utah. We see it all across the US and into Canada. And, even when we have a particularly good year like we did this year, we're still feeling those effects. And, we still have to deal with some of that smoke. And we still hear the stories of how these past practices have impacted our forests. And so Utah Shared Stewardship really rose out of a commitment to just working with all of our land resource management partners in a cross-boundary collaborative way, and in just a best possible means to leverage all of our manpower and our funding sources and to address the wildfire crisis on a landscape scale. Sorry, I don't know where to look. So I'm like looking straight ahead. Okay, perfect. But yes, I feel like I'm ignoring you. But basically the impetus for this was wanting to solidify that commitment to recognizing that we have had a shift in the way that we are pursuing management of our forested lands. And that's going to involve all partners, and that's going to involve us looking at all different types of landscapes. And so Utah has been a real pioneer in doing this type of collaborative work in the past. So, Utah Shared Stewardship is just making that commitment really formalized, and we did that in 2 different agreements, one in 2019 and then a new renewed agreement in 2022. And it is really just trying to spell out the ways in which that we will work together and share resources and communicate in order to do the right work at the right scale in the right places. So those agreements, the first one was signed with between the governor and the Secretary of Agriculture back in 2019, and those primary partners were really the Forest Service and the state. And so that was where those, we have other partners that have joined the table since then, but at the beginning, those were those 2 primary agencies. And they agreed to several different commitments, and those were focused on looking towards protecting communities and watersheds from the threat of catastrophic wildfire. So one of the ways in which we have moved together on developing projects is by creating priority areas or priority watersheds. So as I said, shared stewardship, our focus is communities and watersheds. And you probably are familiar with some of our similar project partners that we also work with. So WRI, which is the Watershed Restoration Initiative, or Catastrophic Wildfire, CAT Fire, but their focus is a little bit different than ours. So we've carved out our niche, which is communities and watersheds. And as we've developed projects, the way that we found to do that is to jointly identify these primary or priority areas and watersheds, and that's where we focus in our projects and our project planning. So when we first developed our maps, we looked at drinking water, hazardous fuels, and strategic protection areas. And that generated around 125 high priority areas, which is where we highlight for our work and where we want, it's a requirement of our projects when they're submitted for funding that they should have at least 20% in these high priority areas. And since 2019, we've made improvements in over 45 of those high priority areas. But there's still quite a lot to go. And, we recognize that there's that need, and there's also, in this, there's just a different climate that we're in now in terms of the emphasis and focus on both hazardous fuels work and also just the protection of our valuable water resources. So today we've had over 35 projects that we've worked on and completed, and that's led to over 80,000 acres treated on all of Utah's forested lands. In 2023, we had 7 projects that were submitted for shared stewardship funding. We had about $3.5 million that was available for funding, and that's made up of a couple different funding sources. We had $1 million from the legislature that we could put towards some of our project implementation, and then we had $1.5 million that was from the Forest Service committed to projects, and then another $1 million that was, did I get the math right on that? $1 million that was devoted to by WRI for projects. So we have projected about 7,000 acres that we'll be able to treat with those funds on this current round of projects. And like I said, we're approaching this really interesting period where instead of approaching all of our project management from a place of not feeling like we have enough funding, not feeling like we have the focus of the people who can make the right decisions. We have a lot of focus and a lot of funding coming to this type of work. So not just shared stewardship, but all hazardous fuels work that is going on throughout the state and throughout the West. So I think that that's an opportunity for us to just reassess how we're planning our projects and whether we're actually meeting the goals of shared stewardship. So of course I'm talking about the wildfire crisis strategy and wildfire crisis strategy landscapes, and then looking to the infrastructure bill, which has a lot of specific provisions in it that are focused towards the needs that we have for reducing our hazardous fuels on all different types of landscapes. So shared stewardship has had to really rethink where we fit into all of this and how we continue to push projects forward, but also, when there's more funding, we need to figure out where those gaps are and just try and leverage our ability to coordinate and our ability to plan projects and really try and meet those goals that we have and all of our partners have. So from the state side, we have been investing in new positions that are focused on capacity building. So one of the big investments that we've made is in 2 joint positions, which are NRCS and FFSL focused. And the main purpose is project generation on NRCS lands. Up until now, we've had a lot of focus on Forest Service lands. It's where a lot of our projects have been generated from. And we know that there are areas that abut some of the Forest Service lands. There's areas that we could try and just leverage our work with NRCS to create more actual landscape scale projects. And they're also helping us to try and unlock NRCS funding, which is something that we haven't been able to do in the past, and we really need to figure out how to connect the dots between what types of funding that we can bring to the table and then what types of funding and resources that they have at their disposal. Now, with bringing in NRCS, we have also been looking at developing a new map. So like I was saying before, we developed this map with our partner in 2019, which was the Forest Service, and then also with the state. And we did have a lot of input from our other partners, But at the time, we were working with the information that we had, the science and the data that we had available, and also with the partners that we were able to reach out to at the time. And so now is really the opportunity for us to work with NRCS and make sure that that our map is actually representing the right areas for us to do our work. So that's something that we're hoping to have updated within the next couple months, and we'll be able to roll that out to our districts, which is what we did when we rolled out our first map, is that we gave all of our partners the opportunity to just let us know if this is representing the areas that you feel are the highest need and the most at risk. And so we plan to do that as well, but we are excited about what this means for how we'll be able to prioritize some of those projects and landscapes that we haven't been able to in the past, and just what that will mean for us achieving the goals for shared stewardship. Now, I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about the work that we're doing in order to reach out to our partners on utilities. Now, shared stewardship is focused on our project development is focused on communities and watersheds. And so it's been a while where we've been wanting to work more with our utility partners. There just seems like there's an obvious connection there between our desire to prioritize those projects that are necessarily going to be in and around a lot of the utility infrastructure. So one of the pilot projects or partners that we've been working with is Central Utah Water Conservancy District. And this is just us, our first foray into this. It's still very us just trying to figure out how this works. And I think that's something where we could really use, help and advice and input from all of you. But we want to use Central Utah, who's been a really proactive partner, both in their willingness to develop projects, but also to invest financially in shared stewardship. So now they have a line item in their budget of $500,000 that they have for shared stewardship projects every year. And I think there's a lot of potential there just to, instead of looking statewide or looking forest-wide or looking area-wide, we are able to generate our projects looking at utility boundaries and watersheds, which I think is always something that we've been working towards with shared stewardship, and just trying to figure out how we get that, how we make that, how we make that leap into those areas, and really just looking to the projects that are the most at need and figuring out where are those partners that are willing to, step up and invest, and also be willing to help us identify other landowners that will help us to create a more watershed-wide project. So I think just want to, highlight that there is a lot of potential with where shared stewardship is trying to go. And I think that there's a lot of discussion going on now about how we want to, like I said, find our role within the wildfire crisis landscape funding and the infrastructure funding. And just there's so many different pools of funding coming down that we need to make sure that all of the tools that we're creating are strategic and they're helping us to achieve our goals. And right now we're working on making sure that we are creating a shared vision with all of our partners and trying to create, shared language that we can use cross partnerships and make sure that we're all, speaking the same language and are able to, work to create those goals. But I know that was a lot of information there, and just kind of more of an overview, and I'm sure some of you have varying knowledge about shared stewardship, but I'm open to any questions, and also just open to continuing to bring this partnership that we're trying to develop with Central Utah to you all, because we're just the how of where we're going to bring our own expertise, and then where we're going to be relying on Central Utah to come to the table, and just how we can grow that kind of partnership that we maybe haven't really had in the past. So with that,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Remind me, Grace, who you represent.
Utah Shared Stewardship.
Oh, it is Utah Shared
Did I
Stewardship.
not go?
Well, you probably did.
I didn't say it all the way at the top, of course.
No, it was probably just me.
Charge right in, why don't I?
Okay,
Oh,
so
and I'm with
perfect.
the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire and Ceilings.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Good, good, good. So Weber Basin Water Conservancy District is also involved with Central Utah and the Forest Service and WRI in the Summit County, Eastern Summit County, Wasatch County areas. Very good program. I mean, I know Summit County is very involved and interested in pushing this, and I'm sure there are many other counties as well and watersheds that would love to be involved, at least interested in what's going on. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. Any questions for Grace?
We're both
Ricky.
so polite. Two questions. One's probably easier than the other. The first one, you mentioned wanting to work with utilities, and you talked about Central Conservancy District, but are you only talking about working with conservancy districts, or when you say utilities, do you have a broader
that's what I was
thought to that?
So initially, it is just the water utilities that we're working with and this is purely through the shared stewardship, program or projects, I will say. Now, there are other programs that do prioritize or do work more closely with the utilities, but when we were trying to figure out what that nexus would be, where we would maybe try to focus our project areas, it was, the water utilities. Now, that being said, when we are doing our mapping and our prioritization, all of those other utility infrastructures are taken into account. We just don't necessarily plan our projects, or we haven't planned our projects with them in the past.
Okay. The second question, thank you, that's helpful, that I don't know if you know an answer to, and I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it clearly, is if you kind of look at the universe of the problem, do you have a estimate of what is the total acreage that needs to be treated versus how much either you or you and partner organizations are able to treat? Just trying to understand the need versus the resource.
Just the universe. We'll just boil it down to the universe. So you're trying to figure out, because I think, so let me just make sure that I understand. So you're talking about the collective problem of wildfire management in general.
Maybe narrow that down to kind of at-risk acres, right? How many acres need treatment to reduce the wildfire risk?
I think this is a question that maybe denotes like a finality to the treatments, and what we are seeing is it's an ongoing question where, I mean, really all the landscapes need to be to some extent treated, or really it's more about a managing or a monitoring or a response in some way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I really think, I'm glad it doesn't all fall to me, but there are, overlapping and intersecting entities that are, all kind of collectively working to either actively treat, actively survey, or monitor and manage and maintain. So I would say that, the scope of the problem, it's really hard to kind of put your finger on in terms of acres. And I also think it's something that we've been trying to figure out, if acres treated is the best articulation of the problem, or no, and that's not even because it's the right work in the right place at the right scale. And so what does that look like in terms of outcomes and in terms of us monitoring some type of success? And so when we're looking at narrowing it down to, the first go at strategizing and prioritizing was kind of the whole state, really. It was the whole of Utah, looking at all of these different watersheds, but also having some gaps and also having some data that wasn't quite there. And so I think now we're looking at a larger scale of areas that we know that we need to treat, and we know that we need to keep some type of
Ongoing.
of monitoring of, but that is an ever evolving and kind of, one of those things you really can't wrap your arms and legs around.
Like you said, even after treatment, it's an ongoing process. It's
And
never
I think
complete.
when you talked about Summit County, they're looking into resiliency funding, because what we see is even when we're thinking proactively, it still can fall short of the after the fact and what we need to do to maintain, because it's an ongoing issue.
Yes. Warren.
My favorite question on these things, having been involved in some private land forest management and seeing the difference when you've got the overloading with fuels and the dead trees and so on to what a cleaned up forest looks like, it's pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the downstream effects, literally the downstream effects. Is there a part of your program, or do you know of one where there's monitoring of what happens to stream flow downstream from treated forests?
Yes, absolutely. So
Great.
there's and I think there was some mention of how there's a lot of different efforts that are taking place, and sometimes there's some overlapping efforts, right, we aren't necessarily managing. So we know that there's some of those efforts being taking place around the state outside of our projects. But Central Utah as a partner, I mean, their whole role that we're trying to develop with them is in that monitoring work. But they're already doing that, right? I mean, that's what their water quantity and quality, that's what the expertise they bring to the table. And then we're able to bring the forestry and project planning and all that side of things. So I think we know that there has to be some proof of concept, right? There has to be demonstration of efficacy, because otherwise we know we had a really great year. We know we got a lot of rain. We know all this stuff, but do we know that we're actually doing the right work in the right place, the right scale? And so, the monitoring is so key. At the right time, exactly. So, the project that we're talking about trying to plan with Central Utah is potentially 10 years. I mean, we're really wanting to look long-term and multi-phase, because that's what the area demands.
Right. Decision's been made yet on how that will be reported? What kind of databases will we be looking to?
No, not yet necessarily on the, and when you say reporting, do you mean that with the water data, or do you mean?
Water data.
Water data? Mm-hmm. No, we haven't devised yet how what kind of reporting we want to come up with them, but I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of being able to start talking about this now and start planning this now with them and devise those goals.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. So Representative Benyon.
I just wanted to briefly share that a year ago, the legislature, at least I was invited to join a shared stewardship tour. And this was in Beaver Mountain. And it was phenomenal to see what they had done there. They did $8 million worth of federal, state, and WR and everybody work. And to see what they had pulled out of the forest there and were preparing to burn was amazing. And compared to the $46 million fire in Bryce Canyon, that's what you can compare it to, that they avoided that.
Absolutely.
And the air quality and the destruction of the watershed. And I just want to, WRI continues to do amazing work. I've been hiking in the canyons, and they have been working in Mill Creek Canyon, huge piles up where it's steep. It's amazing to see their work. So I just want to congratulate you, and this is amazing. Also, I've been meeting with utility companies lately, and they identified wildfire as their greatest risk. Mm-hmm. So this is just tremendous.
Thank you. Yeah, Beaver River is any time that you have a chance to go see those projects, I think they're we had the opportunity to bring the governor there on a helicopter tour in July, and had, just brief chance to bring him down there to see some of the work they were doing, and we also had the chance to show him a little bit more of the state and just give an idea of how, you know, what some of these burn scars look like, what some of these treatment areas look like from the air. But I think Beaver River, amongst a lot of projects and amongst a lot of, you know, WRI projects, they really exemplify what you can do if you're proactive, if it's locally led, because so much of that is, you know, is coming from them, and they're leading out, and they're also innovative. They'll try stuff and it won't work, and then they'll go back to the drawing board, but they're not afraid to say, let's put some money here and let's try something a little new. And so I think anytime that, you can shout them out, I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Good. We're out of time. Any other comments? With that
I
brief.
just gotta ask you, do you find any passion in doing this work?
I'm here to sell shared stewardship to you. Yeah, I know. I speak for the trees.
Well, thank
but
you, Grace.
yeah,
Appreciate it
I'm
very
very
much.
excited about it, and it's great because I think it applies to any natural resource management.
Yeah.
It has to be collaborative, has to be, you know, there has to be communication. That's just the only way to do it. So I'm an evangelist
Very
for
true.
this. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Grace. Appreciate that very much.
Okay.
All right, we're going to skip down to the planning and discussion of future meetings because we've got to, if possible, set those dates by the council. So the proposed dates again are listed on your agenda outline: January 10th, April 11th, July 11th, and October 9th. Are there any discussions on what those about those dates?
Just to
Todd,
note
you-
that those are dates that we have reserved this room, so those are set, and you can use this room on those days. But of course, we'll accommodate whatever
Okay.
you'd like to do.
Typically.
I'm not sure if we set a time, but I think we've done
has
9
been.
and we've done 1. What would your preference be?
One, probably. There's a lot going on in
We can
the
make that
legislature in
happen.
the mornings.
Um,
Any comments?
This
Yeah,
is a
Ricky.
big group, so certainly don't schedule around my schedule, but I would not be available on April 11th. I don't know if anyone else has a conflict that date.
I haven't even looked at my calendar, so.
If not, I will miss you all dearly.
And I will not be here as well. I'll be back in Washington, D.C. on the 11th. So if we look at April, how about April 4th? Any issues there as far as you know?
What day of the week?
That's Thursday as well.
That is available currently, so it could work.
That works for me.
Let's tentatively put for April 4th then. Thanks for bringing that up. That would have been bad. Okay, any other comments?
I can tell you January 10th, 11th is that water confluence in Ogden. The Reed River Partnership.
Right. January 10th. I don't want to go any earlier. Let's. Looking at further in that month, so the 25th is a Thursday. Any conflicts on the 25th?
It's during legislative session.
Oh, yes, it is.
And the Board of Water Resources has this room
Just
on that
after
day.
it starts.
Session starts the 16th, but that first
Eight.
week's easier.
The 18th would be free for this facility.
Yeah, 18th is good. Yeah. January 18th. Thanks, Rick, for that. Okay, let's have a motion to set those those dates for this coming year.
I'll make that motion. January 18th, April 4th, July 11th, and October 9th.
Great, we have a motion and a second to set the future meeting dates for 2024. As noted, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We do have maybe 30 seconds for public comment if anybody is dying to say something from the public.
Excellent.
All right, thank you so much. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.